Welcome to the crochet tutorial with Cozy Rosie UK, and today I'm going to be showing you how you can create these really beautiful crocheted bauble covers. So these bauble covers feature the granny stitch, so it is worked into the posts between the stitches, so it's a really super quick project. And of course, if you've got some old tatty baubles that you want to cover up, this is the perfect way to do it. So before we get started, don't forget to hit that notification bell, and of course hit the subscribe button so that you get made aware as soon as a new crochet tutorial or crochet pattern is available. Let's see what materials we need to complete this project. So we're going to need a shatterproof bauble. This has already got the top fixed to it, and it even came with a string, which is always a bonus. So the size that I have here is about 18 inches, or 18 and a half inches, centimeters, sorry, centimeters. So 18 centimeters, which is 7¼ inches. Just your typical normal sized bauble. Now I do have some giant baubles that I will be covering up later this year, but for now we're going to stick with this size. Now I've already done 1/2 of my bauble cover. So what's going to happen is we're going to make 2 of these, and they just pop onto the bauble, so it covers half the bauble, and then we sew them together, and that creates this beautiful crisscross down the middle. So let's look at what other materials we're going to be needing. So I'm going to be using my favorite, which is of course Paintbox yarns in cotton DKs. This is 100% cotton, and it's a size 3 yarn. And I'm going to use the recommended hook size, which is a 4mm. So this colour is red wine, which is shade number 416, and then I have paper white, which is 401. I'm going to be using those 2 together. As you saw, I've also used one with racing green. I think that's racing green. Can't remember the shade colour for that one, but they work up really, really nicely. Now, it's not to say you have to use cotton. As a perfect example, this one has been done in 100% acrylic, and actually, I kind of like the fuzzy look. If anything, it loses a bit of its stitch definition, which makes it look a little bit more, should I say vintage? I think that looks more vintage, really, because it's less neat and tidy. But either way, whatever cotton or whatever materials you're using, this project works up so quickly that you are going to fall in love with it, and your whole tree can look handmade. So let's get started on this project. Now you have the choice of how you start. You can either make a slip knot with a chain 4 and join to create a ring, or you can make a magic circle. I'm not going to do a magic circle tutorial right now, but you can find my tutorial linked in the description box below. I didn't mention you're also going to need a pair of scissors and a darning needle to sew them together. So for round 1, we need a magic circle or a chain 4 slip stitch to create a ring. And what we're going to do is we're going to work directly into the middle of that ring, but we start by making our first stitch with a turning chain of 3. So we chain 3, so 1, 2 and 3, and that counts as our first stitch. Now, as you can see, I'm holding my tail against the magic circle, so that at the end when I pull that tail yarn, it cinches it all in. So we're going to work another 11 double crochets, which is in US terms, treble crochet in UK terms, into the center of the ring. So we yarn over, insert the hook, yarn over to bring a loop up. I'm going to tidy that up a bit, pull through the first 2 and pull through the first 2. And we do that for a total of 11. So that will give us, with that first chain 3, that will give us a total stitch count for round 1 of 12. So keep working that first round, and I will see you ready for joining and then round 2. So I'm just double checking my stitch count here before I go any further, because I've already started a couple of these and got this wrong. So there's a chain 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12. So we're going to join into the top of that starting chain of 3. Before I do that, I'm just going to bring my work together so that it closes the hole by pulling on that tail yarn. And then I'm going to slip stitch into the very top of that chain 3. So you've got your stitch is there, so that's that one, and we want this one just here. Now I'm going to go in between what looks like the stitch and pick up the front loop and the back loop, so we have 2 loops on our hook, and then slip stitch to join. Now we're going to change colours. If you're not changing colour, you can keep going, but for here we're just going to chain 1, and I'm going to fasten off straight away because I'm going to change to the next colour. In my case, that's going to be red. And what we're going to do is going to join in between these posts. So this here is the post of a stitch, and we're going to go in between them. So I'm going to shove my hook from back to front into there. I'm going to find the end of my yarn, and I'm just going to loop that over my hook to bring it through. We don't want that, thank you. And then I'm just simply going to tie it on. Now the reason I do that is because it just makes it a little bit more secure. I also hate weaving in ends, so this saves me a job as well. Let's get rid of that, that will annoy me. So now that it's tied on, we just need to make sure that our original tail is at the back and we've got the pretty side of our stitches. Can you see you've got like the back end of these stitches here? We want the pretty side facing us because we're working in the round, and all the right side is going to show towards us. So now that we have that tied on, we're going to insert our hook back through and bring a loop up through the space in between those posts, and then we can start round 2. So we chain 3, which does count as a US double crochet or a UK treble crochet, and then we're going to place a second straight into the same spot. There we go. And we're going to repeat that the whole way around, so going in between each and every post, working 2 US double crochets. So that's going to actually double our stitch count from 12 to 24. And it really does create those, kind of looks a little bit spiky when we work in between the posts of the stitches as opposed to directly into the stitches. As you can see, I'm also working over my ends from the previous round and where we changed colour, because again that will prevent us having to weave those in, which is kind of a little bit difficult when you're doing colour changes anyway. So just continue working over those for as long as you feel is necessary. I'm going to stop after this stitch, just bring those out of the way, and just continue to work around. So keep working 2 double crochets into each space between the stitches, and I will meet you at the end of row 2 so that we can join and change colours again. So I've just done a quick count of my stitches. So as you can see, you should have 2 double crochets coming out of each of these stitches. So we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22 and 24. Oh, that is the correct amount of stitches. So then we're just going to join into the top of that chain 3 once again, just with a little slip stitch, and we're going to fasten off, ready to change colours again. So do a little chain 1, that creates our knot, cut, pull up, pull through, and there we are. That is the end of round 2. So this time we're going to go and work in between each pair. So we're going to insert our hook where we see the top of the white. Again, front to back just means that our ends are facing the right way for us to weave in, and just tie on your colour change. Ready to work into these chain spaces. So for round 3, we're going to work the whole round in the granny stitch. If you're not familiar with that, you just insert your hook, bring up a loop and work your chain 3, which does count as a stitch. And then our granny stitch is actually made of 3 double crochets in US, 3 treble crochets in UK. So working back into that same space again, we're going to work a further 2 double crochets, and then we're going to work into that next space See the top of that white stitch? So not in between these red ones, in between the pairs of red ones. And again, I'm just working over my ends to avoid having to weave those in. So we're going to work 3 double crochets into the next space between the pairs of stitches. And we're going to do that the whole way around. So we're going to increase our stitch count again by 12 by going up to 3 here. There we go. And just repeat that the whole way around. I'm going to meet you back at the end of round 3, which we're currently working, so that we can join and then move on to round 4. And then we're nearly close to actually joining and sewing. So keep on going. I'll meet you at the end of this round and we will move on together to round 4. So that's the end of round 3 for me. So we should now have 12 granny stitches, which is the 3 double crochet clusters on top of that red one as well. So have a count just to make sure that you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12. If you have, you are ready to move on. Again, we're just going to slip stitch to the top of that chain 3 and we're going to change colours again. So we're fastening off, ready for, oh, these scissors are doing well, aren't they? Ready for round 4. Can you guess? Yeah, we are. We're going to join in between. Now, this is the last time we're going to do this actually, because in round 5 we don't we don't finish off, we change colours. So we just tie on your new colour again through that space between those granny stitches. I'm just tying it on just for a little bit of security. You can do a what I call a real colour change if you want to, but there's no way that this is coming undone. So round 4, we are repeating what we did in round 3. It's exactly the same. So we'd start with our chain 3 in our new colour and then work a further 2 double crochets into the same space. And then in between each of these clusters, we're going to work 3 double crochets again. So exactly the same as we did for row 3. Row 4 is just a very, very simple repeat. And we can just continue that the whole way around for row 4. So carry on around working those 3 double crochet clusters into each of the spaces between the white clusters. And I will meet you at the end of round 4, ready to finish off round 5. And then I'm going to show you how to sew them together for the perfect finish on your bauble. So you may notice that your bauble cover is kind of closing in on itself, and that's because we didn't increase in our 4th round. And it's actually what we want it to do, because when we fold it the right way, you can see it's starting to create that lovely roundness we need to go over the bauble. So I'm going to slip stitch to join, but this time I'm not going to chain 1. I'm going to change colours. So I'm going to grab my white and just drape it over my hook, pinch it and pull it through. I'm then going to pull on my red yarn to pull that loop down and pick up the longer bit that's attached to the ball for my colour change. So what we're going to do in our final round for each part is we're going to work 1 US single crochet into each of the top of these stitches around. So you just reinsert your hook where you did your slip stitch and work 1 single crochet into each of the top of these stitches. Oh, make sure you get both loops of your stitch. Silly me. There we go. And we literally just work 1 single crochet into the top of each of our double crochets of the previous row. And again, I am working over my edging so that I don't have to weave in my ends. So I have reached the end of round 5 and I'm just going to slip stitch into that first stitch that I made, do a little chain 1, but on this time I need to leave enough yarn so that I can comfortably sew up the two halves together. So I've got a good 12, maybe 16 inches there of tail to sew up. Now our red yarn is still attached. So I'm going to pop all of this the right way out, or the wrong way out, as the case may be, so we can look at all of these ends and make sure that they are secure. So with this red, I don't need to waste any more of this. So I'm going to snip it quite closely to my project and get that out of the way straight away. There we go. Now this white one, we need to remove anything that we're not sewing up with. So we're just going to make sure that they are woven in a little bit, that they are reasonably secure. This isn't a project that's going to be played with or messed around with too much. It's just going to sit and look pretty on our Christmas trees. So we don't need to be too extra about getting all these ends weaving in and making sure we've got tiny ends. Just make sure you're happy with the tension. If you did want to tighten the middle of your circle, you can weave in and out using your tail yarn, kind of working in and under all the stitches, just to make sure that you have a nice close, because it will just bring the edges in a little bit closer. And when you're happy with that, you can just snip that last one off. I leave a little bit just in case it expands. And then we are ready to turn it the right way out. Complete the magic of the internet and imagine how glorious they're going to look together. So we don't quite need our actual bauble yet. We're going to start by joining these together. So my top tip would be, I've got long ends on both of them, is actually to start sewing them a little bit with one stitch opposite each other from where you fastened off. I hope that makes sense. So for instance, you see you've got your long one here and your long one there. Make it so that they are one stitch apart from each other when you start sewing. There will be a reason for that, and I will show you why, but it just gives you a really neat finish on your bauble. So what I'm going to do is kind of flatten out my bauble covers, making sure that both the right sides are showing. So you can see you've got those kind of tatty bits on the inside, nice clean bits there. We want the right side facing out. There is one join there. I've got one stitch in between, and I'm going to start here. So what we're going to do is insert our needle into the back loop of our stitch. So you see you've got a front loop and a back loop here, and we just want to go through that back loop on the bauble cover closest to us, and then we're going to go through the loop that's closest to us on the other side and just pull that through. And we work back the other way. So we go through that back loop, through that loop, and we repeat that the whole way down, making sure that we've worked into each stitch. We don't want to skip any because we've got the same stitch count on each of these bauble covers. So just making sure that we go through the corresponding stitches and that none of them are getting pulled out. So you don't need to be pulling exceptionally tightly here when you're sewing these up, because we may need a little bit of stretch in a moment when we pop our bauble in. But just keep sewing through each of those stitches, making sure that none have been missed out, and that we're only working through one loop of our stitches. So we've got to work, we're going to sew up quite a bit of this before we insert the bauble, because once the bauble is in there, it gets a little bit more difficult. I'm just going to give that a gentle pull to make sure that all those are joined nicely and neatly. And I'm just going to keep going and working around until we get a little bit closer to where we originally started sewing up. There we go. So I'm going to insert my bauble now. So I'm kind of, as you can see, quite a way back towards it. Plus this way you don't get to see my reflection quite as much. There we go. And you just kind of have to arrange it a little bit, be a bit forceful to get it in there. Now what I'm going to do is slide it around so that we are quite close to this join here where we've already got our bauble holder, but we still need to sew up these last remaining. So just need to make sure that this is nice and tight. Oh, my needle's fallen off. That's always a joy. So pull that nice and tight so that we haven't got too much of the bauble showing through. And rethread your needle if you've done what I did. And we're just going to keep working, making sure we only pick up those back loops. We're doing one side then the other. It's a little bit fiddlier once the bauble is in place, but it's just taking your time just to capture those back loops only to really give you that beautiful finish. Okay, so as we're approaching the final few, you can see why I told you to leave one stitch unworked, because that is where we're going to join these sides together for one final moment. We end up just where our other fastening off was. And of course it's me, so I'm just going to tie little knots to make sure it's super secure. Everything looks nice and woven in. I'm going to make another knot just for extra security. That's not coming undone, I can assure you. So I'm just going to make these ends the same length, because I think that makes life a lot easier with what we're about to do. Because we're now going to bury these ends in our bauble. So we're never going to see these again. It's never going to come off unless we cut it off. Because all we're going to do is run down the side of the bauble underneath and pull those ends through. That's all we need to do to bury those. And then we simply snip, give it a wiggle, and you have a completed bauble cover. Now I hope you've really enjoyed this tutorial. I certainly enjoy making these lovely bauble covers, and I hope that you join me again very soon for another crochet tutorial. Of course, as always, head on over to the community group and let me see your finished makes. You can find that in the description box below as well. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and if you've enjoyed this tutorial, give it a thumbs up so that even more people can make these cute, lovely bauble covers.